A study published earlier this year found that self-efficacy, that belief that you can actually pull off the task, protects women from performance anxiety almost twice as strongly as it protects men. But my research found that female singers often have less of it to begin with, especially in male-dominated environments. So which is it? Are women more vulnerable or are they more resilient? Turns out maybe both. Let's get into it. This is a new research review. So if you're new here, this is where I take some recently published study in a peer-reviewed journal and translate it into something useful for singers and singing teachers. No jargon required. This study is called Psychological Predictors of Music Performance Anxiety Among Vocal Students, published in Frontiers in Psychology in February this year. The researchers surveyed 526 vocal music students across 24 conservatoriums in China. Roughly half were men and half were women, a mix of undergrad and postgraduate students. What they wanted to know was this: does support from your parents, your teachers, and your peers actually reduce performance anxiety? And if so, how? Is it just that having people in your corner feels kind of nice, or is it something deeper actually changing? So to test that, they use a statistical method called structural equation modeling, which is a mouthful, and a way of testing not just whether two things are related, but whether A actually leads to B, which then leads to C. So instead of just showing that support and anxiety are related, they could test whether support actually changes something in the student first, and whether that change is what lowers the anxiety. So what did they find? Well, it turns out more support does predict less performance anxiety. But it doesn't work by magic. It works because that support changes three things about how a student sees themselves: self-efficacy, your belief that you can actually pull off a specific task, which is an important distinction to make because it's not the same thing as just being a generally confident person. You can walk into a room feeling completely confident and still have low self-efficacy for one particular skill, like sight reading or improvising over changes. The second one, self-worth, your sense of value as a person separate from how well you perform. And intrinsic motivation, singing because you genuinely love it, not because you're actually chasing a grade or someone else's approval. Those things are what actually move the needle on performance anxiety, and support is just the delivery mechanism. The researchers used an existing, well-validated scale built on the work of psychologist Albert Bandura, and Bandura's theory says self-efficacy comes from 4 sources. Mastery experience, meaning you've actually succeeded at the task before. Vicarious experience, meaning you've watched someone like you succeed at it. Verbal persuasion, meaning someone credible has told you that you can do it. And your psychological or physiological state in the moment, meaning whether your body and mind are telling you this is safe or dangerous. That's the exact same 4-part model that I used to build the self-efficacy pillar of my own pedagogical framework, the one that came out of my PhD research on improvising singers. And drawing on Bandura's theory alongside what I heard from my interview participants, I concluded that mastery experience is the most powerful lever for building a student's belief in themselves. Not pep talks, not praise, actual evidence that they can do the thing. So what we've got here is a big quantitative study out of China and a smaller qualitative study that I did here in Australia, a few years apart, completely different singer populations, completely different methods, coincidentally landing on the exact same architecture for how self-efficacy actually gets built. When that same explanation is showing up across really different studies, I think that's worth paying attention to. This study and the findings of my research turn out to be two pieces of the same puzzle. The Chinese study measured how strongly self-efficacy protects against performance anxiety separately for men and for women. And for women, that protective effect was almost twice as strong. And then there's peer support, meaning encouragement and connection from classmates. That was shown to significantly build self-efficacy for female students. But for male students in this sample, it basically didn't register as significant at all. Now, on its own, that might sound like women are the resilient ones here, but that's not the whole picture. In male-dominated settings like a jazz ensemble, I found that female singers are far more reticent to improvise. They're less willing to sound bad in front of other people. And part of the reason I found is that they simply get fewer chances for vicarious experience, fewer chances to watch someone who looks like them, who's in a similar position to them, succeed at the task first. If you're the only woman in the room, there's no one to model that experience for you. So here's the synthesis. Women may be walking into these environments with lower self-efficacy to begin with. That matches what I found. But this new study shows that once you build it, it does more work for them. It actually protects them more. That's not a contradiction between the two studies. It's the same story told from two different angles. Women may have more ground to make up, but every bit of self-efficacy that they build carries more weight. Most of us were never taught to build self-efficacy on purpose. The support and encouragement that actually builds it tends to happen by accident. And it tends to land on the students who already look confident, the ones who get the solos and the opportunities. This data makes the case for something more deliberate. That kind of support shouldn't be a reward for how confident a student already appears. It should be something that we're intentionally building into how we teach everyone. And for our female students in particular, that intentional support might be the most valuable place to start. So what does intentional support actually look like in a lesson? In my framework, I have a specific pedagogical tool built around designing these experiences deliberately, and it works on two fronts at once. There's the mastery experience side. The singer needs to be in an ensemble with instrumentalists who are skilled enough to actually support her. Great comping, clear chord voicings, listening outside their own part, so that she has a solid harmonic and rhythmic foundation to succeed against. And there's the vicarious experience side, and that's a different relationship entirely. Singer to singer, not singer to instrumentalist. She shouldn't be left to model herself against a senior faculty member or a highly advanced player alone. That gap is too big for that to be able to build confidence. She needs another singer in that ensemble who's just one or two steps ahead of her, close enough that the gap feels climbable. Ideally, this means a faculty member who understands why self-efficacy matters and is deliberately configuring the ensemble itself with strong enough instrumentalists to hold up the mastery experience side, and a thoughtful singer pairing built in to hold up the vicarious experience side. Both have to be designed in at once. When I built that recommendation, it came from a few different sources: my interview participants, what I was observing at the institution where I worked, weekly conversations with my own voice students, and honestly, what I remembered from my own experience as a student. I didn't have the statistical data to back it up, but this new research provides that independent evidence, showing that peer support is doing real, measurable work, building self-efficacy in women in a way that it isn't for men in this sample. That's exactly what the peer pairing recommendation is designed to tap into: vicarious experience. It's genuinely so satisfying to see a completely separate piece of research land on the same practical recommendation. There's one more finding that I want to mention. For male students in this study, educator support was the single strongest predictor of almost everything: self-efficacy, self-worth, motivation, and lower anxiety. For female students, teacher support mattered, but it was one input among several, not the dominant one. This actually lines up with something that I found too. Negative or dismissive feedback from a teacher does more damage to self-efficacy than positive feedback does good. So if you're teaching, here's the takeaway. Your feedback might be doing more heavy lifting with your male students than you realize, which means how you deliver it matters enormously. And for female students, that cuts both ways. Be conscious of how your own feedback lands, because we already know that negative or dismissive feedback does outsized damage. But it's not just about what you say one-on-one. Peer support doesn't happen by accident. It has to be built deliberately into your course design, your course culture, and how you form your ensembles. And peers aren't only other singers. The male instrumentalists in the room are peers too. But if there's an us and them culture running through the program, whether it splits along gender lines or along the singer-instrumentalist divide, and faculty let that slide or even reinforce it, that's not just an unpleasant vibe to tolerate. That culture is directly cutting off her access to mastery experience and vicarious experience, the two things we already know build self-efficacy in the first place. Before we wrap up, let's poke a few holes in this, because a study that agrees with me isn't the same thing as it being airtight. This study is a single snapshot in time, and it's built entirely on what students reported about themselves, not something researchers actually observed. So even though the statistics can sound like they are proving A causes B causes C, what we really have here is a strong pattern, not hard proof of cause and effect. It's also a single country sample of conservatorium level students, so it may not generalize perfectly to adult hobbyist singers, contemporary or pop students, or the typical students filling most private studios. And unlike my own research, this study isn't specific to improvisation or to the particular kind of risk that comes along with a genre like jazz. It's performance anxiety in general. So I'm not telling you that this study proves my framework correct. I'm telling you it's a strong, independent piece of converging evidence from a completely different context, and that's genuinely valuable, but there is still more to learn. So what do you actually do with this? If you're a teacher, take a look at your male students and ask whether they're relying almost entirely on your feedback for their self-efficacy. If so, that's worth noticing. And it might be worth thinking about how you can widen the circle of support around them rather than being the only source that they're leaning on. And take a look at your female students too and ask, do they have a peer just one step ahead of them to watch succeed? Not just you, and not a role model so far ahead that the gap feels unreachable. If you're a singer, here's what I want you to take from this. Performance anxiety is not a personal failing. It comes down to how much mastery experience, peer modeling, and constructive feedback you currently have access to. And all three of those are buildable. None of them are fixed traits that you are stuck with. If this one was useful for you, a like and subscribe is genuinely appreciated. And if there's a singer or a singing teacher in your life who needs to hear this, feel free to send it their way. If you want the full citation and the numbers I referenced today, they are linked below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.